Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Anderson, co-owner of AVAIYA University with my partner, Ike Allen. Thank you so much for joining us for our Breaking Free from Codependency curriculum. We have a great class lined up for you today with Dr. Joe Rubino. He is going to be talking with us about the most important component to breaking free from codependency, which is high self-esteem. Dr. Joe and I will dive into many different topics and subtopics as it relates to codependency, including the origins of codependency. Where did it come from in your life? How did it develop? How did you get to where you are today in your relationship with yourself and others in your life? We also talk about the connection between codependency and self-esteem, of course, and how to break free from emotional addiction, emotions such as anger, anxiety, fear, sadness, all of those really perceived negative emotions, how to break free from being addicted to those kind of emotional patterns. And we'll talk about much, much more. So please enjoy the class, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AVAIYA's Breaking Free from Codependency curriculum. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Dr. Joe Rubino, is here to talk with us today about the most important component in breaking free from codependency, high self-esteem. Dr. Joe is the CEO of Center for Personal Reinvention and is acknowledged as one of the world's foremost experts on the topic of elevating self-esteem. He is a life-changing personal development and success coach on how to restore self-esteem, how to achieve business success, maximize joy and fulfillment in life, as well as productivity. He is also known for his groundbreaking work in personal and leadership development, building effective teams, enhancing listening and communication skills. Dr. Joe has also been featured in several other AVAIYA University events, including Breaking Free from Abandonment and Betrayal and Overcoming Insecurity and Low Self-Esteem. Thank you so much for being back with us, Dr. Joe.
Always a pleasure, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I agree. It's always nice to reconnect with you. And I'm so happy that you said yes to talking about probably my favorite topic in the world, which is codependency. So let's dive in. What do you consider to be the most important component for anyone to break free of codependent tendencies in order to ultimately live a thriving life?
Well, by definition, codependency is all about not feeling like you're able to function fully and powerfully and effectively on your own. So you need to latch on to someone else in some way for support. And the source of that is always low self-esteem. So it's about not only not feeling as if you're competent or personally powerful, but perhaps you don't feel significant, or perhaps you don't feel like you're virtuous enough to do things on your own. So you need to latch on to another person or persons in order to get through in the world. And so when we elevate self-esteem, the codependency goes away. Because why? We discover that we do have the personal power within us. We do understand that we have the capability of living our own life that honors our own values, that supports us and nourishes us and contributes to other people. We no longer have to go from that dependent mode. We can shift to independence and then super dependence, which is all about creating win-win scenarios between ourselves and others in the world.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you for telling us about that. So yeah, self-esteem is so crucial as it relates to this topic. I knew that you'd be so good for this topic because of that, because yeah, without self-esteem, it's so hard to detach and not be latching onto other people in a really unhealthy kind of dependence. So another thing you talk about, Dr. Joe, in your work is living deliberately. Could you share a little bit about what that means? How do we live deliberately?
Well, living deliberately means having an intention for your life. And going further, having an intention for all of your actions and what you intend to accomplish daily, weekly, monthly, and during the whole course of your lifetime. So for people that are codependent, it's a good idea to get a handle on where does your codependency manifest into the world. You know, are you more dependent in some areas than others? So if you look at the 6 key areas of life, if you look at your health and appearance, if you look at your wealth and finances, if you look at your career or your job, if you look at your relationships and the area of personal and spiritual development and having fun and recreating and pursuing your passions. If, one of these areas could be more codependent than another. So maybe you're insecure about your looks. So maybe we need to support ourselves to build self-esteem in that area. Maybe your relationships are suffering. Maybe you feel as though, no one likes you or you don't fit in. So you latch on to a person or persons that you think that you can get support from. Perhaps you don't feel confident in your work. And so, again, you're codependent on a job that you don't enjoy. It's not your avocation. It's something that you do to make some money, but it's not a passion of yours. And so the thing about living intentionally is, once you identify the areas where you are codependent, what would it look like if you had a magic wand and you could live intentionally? So what bonds would you break? What abusive relationships would you terminate? What work environment would you enhance or move into, as opposed to the one that doesn't serve you right now? So when you're clear about what's working and what's missing in your life, you have a much higher degree of probability of stepping into a new possibility for your life that empowers you. And empowerment is really the opposite of codependency. It's about living your life in choice. It's about being passionate about what you do. It's about honoring your values. And my definition of success in life encompasses all of those: honoring your values, living your life purpose, and being on the path of never-ending improvement, so that every day you embrace the opportunities that allow you to be in personal development, to be all that you can be, to make your day better and someone else's day better at the same time, to actually live an empowered life where you can't wait for every day, that dawn to come, because you know that day is going to be filled with empowering possibilities for you to live your utmost life, live your dream.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. I love that you dove into lots of different areas where codependency can show up, because while a lot of times we tend to, or at least in AVAIYA events, a lot of times people are relating it to a romantic partnership, there are many different ways that codependency can show up, right? In jobs, careers, with your pets. That's one that has showed up for me in the past couple of years. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm so codependent, like with our dog, like, that's right. Interesting stuff. Yeah. So anyways, but yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So everyone watching right now, just kind of take an inventory on what areas of your life this is showing up in. So if you were to give people a roadmap to help them, right, break free from this codependency, to help them develop that high self-esteem, where would people start?
Well, that roadmap has three components. It's about first healing and completing your past, because you're codependent for a reason. It's because you either bought into someone's negativity or you made some things up that don't support you, going all the way back likely to your childhood, and then being reinforced every time the heat is on, every time you're in a stressful situation where you continue to look through that lens that says, I'm not good enough to be on my own. I'm not powerful enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not charismatic enough. I'm not funny enough. So whatever it is that you feel you're deficient in that has you latch onto a relationship or some person or thing that doesn't support you, you now have the ability to manage that by healing and completing your past. So, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Thought I had a sneeze.
Oh, it's okay. No problem.
So what does healing and completing your past mean? It means not being at the effect of any of these negative thoughts. It means being clear about that negative self-talk, that little gremlin on your shoulder that's always telling you these things about how you're not good enough, how you're unlovable, how you're flawed significantly, how you don't fit in, how you're not something, not smart enough, not good looking enough, not charismatic enough. Somehow you don't measure up. You're not perfect in enough ways that you can be empowered to live a life of choice. So once you've healed and completed your past, and let me give you a sense of what that looks like. It looks like creating new interpretations about what you made up about yourself and about others and about the world that doesn't support you. So we can do an exercise a little bit later that will support that component. Once you've healed and completed your past, we can then go on to the next component, which is doing a proper assessment of what's working optimally in your present life and what's missing that if put into place would support all areas of life. So I mentioned the 6 key areas a little while ago. So if you look everywhere from your relationships to your career, to your having fun, to your finances, to your fulfilling or lack of fulfilling work, what would you put into place that would have each area be more of an ideal situation for you, where you love what you're doing, you love life in that area? And importantly, what if you were to then design your future in choice? What would having a future where you're empowered moment by moment, where you love who you're living with, you love yourself, you know that you're attracting people charismatically at will, you have plenty of friends, you love your hobbies and your work and what you do, you travel, you pursue your passions, you have fun, whatever that means for you on a regular basis. Your work is so fulfilling that you do it for free, you love it that much. Your finances are abundant, so there's no such thing as living in poverty or in scarcity. You're in personal development, so you're developing the qualities that you want to be known for, the qualities that empower your life, the qualities that have you self-sufficient and interdependent with others, where you're actually creating bonds on a daily basis that nurture you and nurture others. So once you identify your core values and you're living those values, you've identified your life purpose and you've stepped into that life purpose so that you actually know that you're empowered moment by moment in your life. You've created a vision for every aspect of your life. So you're running on all cylinders. You're being the qualities you want to be known for. You're doing the things that you love to do. You're surrounding yourself with the possessions and the people that empower your life and that make you happy. And you're contributing your gifts to others and to the world, which is an important component of any vision. You then can go on and you can set powerful, empowered goals that are short, medium, and long term, that have you manifest the things into your life that you want to be surrounded with. And most importantly, you have created a personal development plan, and that plan supports your action plan, because when you get stopped in life, it allows you to train yourself. It allows you to ask yourself, who am I being that this type of chronic condition is showing up in my life? Who am I being that I'm always subject to abuse? Who am I being that I have no friends? Who am I being that I have accepted a life of poverty? Who am I being that I'm not having much fun? And when you start to examine your life in more detail, you now have the ability to achieve breakthroughs. Those breakthroughs can come with the support of a coach. They can come with the support of programs that will assist you to look inwardly and to achieve new heights, because you're now letting life train you. You're not just going through the motions in resignation. You're not living emotionally reactively with anger or sadness or fear or anxiety to what life's stresses give you. But you're empowered moment by moment, knowing that today I'm going to be greeted with many opportunities that are going to change my life and allow me to make other people's lives better today. So let me look for those opportunities. Let me create those opportunities on purpose. Let me be empowered by the decisions that I'm making when I speak with people and I interact with people. Know that it's all good. Give up your right to invalidate yourself. Give up your right to be a victim in life, and know that everything that happens to you in life is a result of your creation when you're responsible, when you're able to respond to life's challenges. And that's truly an empowered and exciting place to stand to live your life full out.
Beautiful. I love that. I love, like, a couple of things I just want to touch on, right? Like when you mentioned, who am I being that I'm attracting maybe unhealthy relationships in my life? And who am I being if, these things are happening to me, or I'm repeating cycles. And that in and of itself is right. Giving up your right to be a victim. That's so empowering, because then it comes back into our court, and how can we change our ways of being to ultimately change our life. And yeah, I love that. Thank you. That was beautiful.
And Andy, it's not so much that we're at the effect of what the world is giving us. It's that we have the personal power to impact our lives, to impact the lives of others. So when we look at what's missing that I've put into place would support my life to be happier, more fulfilled, more abundant, have greater relationships, we now have a place to stand. We have a place to look. We're no longer at the effect of what life gives us. And we're not saying that life doesn't have its challenges. So I'm very clear that many people have extreme challenges, but you wouldn't be given the challenges if you weren't given the tools to overcome those challenges. Mm-hmm. So look at each challenge as a gift, that the most difficult people are there to train you. The most difficult people are there for your development. And so when you embrace life that way, and you have the support of people in the personal development industry, of a coach, of courses that assist you to achieve insights and breakthroughs, you now have a whole new perspective on, okay, bring it on. I'm ready for it, because you know what? I'm up to the task.
I love it. I love that. You're always so inspiring. I love that the challenges can be looked at. We can change our perspective and into gifts, and right teachers, right? The most challenging people or circumstances in our life can be our best teachers. So I love that. So let's talk a little bit more around success qualities. And you may have kind of dove into all this already, but I know you talk about to your top 3 personal success qualities in order to, live a really effective and healthy life. What are those?
Well, if we're, remember I said that one of the 3 key areas of developing an empowered life with high self-esteem is healing and completing your past. So, and these 3 qualities are essential for healing and completing your past, because without them, you're really going to struggle. The first is empathy. So people say and do mean things many times. But when we realize that 99% of an upset is about the person who's upset, and only 1% about the person who's supposedly causing the upset, when we realize that people do the best that they know how to do based upon how they see their lives, we don't have to condone bad behavior, but what we can do is we can free ourselves from being a victim. We can free ourselves from being at the effect of their bad behavior. So one of the things that will support that is empathy. So when we can ask ourselves, what is it like in the other person's world for them to say such a rotten thing, or for them to do something like they just did? So instead of taking it personally and being invalidated by it, we can say, okay, well, maybe that person had an alcoholic father, or maybe that person grew up with such low self-esteem that they have to feel temporarily powerful by making others feel bad about who they are. So we're not condoning that behavior, but what we're saying is, okay, that's about you. I'm going to try it on like a coat. If the coat fits, I'm going to look at, okay, who am I being that I'm attracting this type of behavior? But if it doesn't fit, and if it's all about the other person, I'm going to release it in any event, and I'm going to know that it's not about me, it's about them. So empathy is about allowing ourselves the freedom to not be at the effect of other people's words and deeds, especially when they're not so good. Mm-hmm. The second quality is forgiveness. Forgiveness starts with forgiving ourselves, because until we can forgive ourselves, we can't forgive others. The people that are most angry in the world right now, we're looking at all the violence in the world. We're looking at all the terrible stuff that's going on in our entire world, not just our country, but in our entire world. It's because people can't be with who they are, so they look for the flaw and the faults in other people. So when we can forgive ourselves, we now have the ability to forgive others. When we can forgive others, we no longer have to live in the energy of attraction of whatever negativity that relationship has brought us. We can free ourselves up, and we can move forward to more positive, empowered relationships. If we're attracted to a codependent person, if we ourselves are codependent, we have the ability by forgiving ourselves and forgiving the other person to move on. It's when we want vengeance, when we want retribution, when we want to get even, that energy keeps us stuck in suffering, and it keeps that downward spiral in place. So forgiveness is essential for not only our own healing, but the healing of relationships, and for our ability to move on and to not have to experience that same upset in life, that chronic upset that is constantly with us because we've healed it and we've completed it. The third component is gratitude. It's hard to be a victim and be grateful at the same time. So that when we live with gratitude, we prepay blessings into our lives. We know that great things are coming, and we're so grateful for the blessings that we have. We can always find someone who is in worse shape than we are, financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically, relationship-wise. So when we can look for our blessings and be grateful for them, we can attract more blessings into our lives. And when we are meditating, when we are consciously aware of the blessings that we have and the blessings that we wish to attract into our lives, doors will open, because we're now giving off an energy that's conducive to attracting those blessings. So those three qualities are critical for developing higher self-esteem, healing our past, so that we now can then do that proper assessment of what's so in our lives, and then design our lives in choice, honoring our values and living our best lives.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. I love that. So here's a question a little bit outside of what we've just been talking about. Emotional intoxication. This is something I resonate so well with, because I tend to be someone addicted to what's wrong, what could happen, catastrophizing, that kind of stuff. And I know so many people who struggle with codependency also have that. So what would you say the role of emotional intoxication is, or emotional addiction to like negative emotions is in codependency?
Well, this is the glue that keeps codependency in place. And the sad thing is that most people don't know about this, because no one's talking about this hardly. It's the addictive moods that we're all prone to. Like a heroin addict is addicted to heroin, we're addicted to a mood of typically anger or sadness or fear or anxiety. So the mood that you just described is an addiction to fear. 24% of women and 16% of men are actually addicted to fear. And many codependents are addicted to fear. They fear being alone. They fear of not being able to be competent in the world. They fear of having a lesser lifestyle, so they settle for less. They settle for abusive relationships. They settle for people that aren't their soulmates, that they have much in common with. They settle for people who they really don't like, that they don't have that bond with, because they fear that they're not going to be able to replace them. And the old saying, the known hell is better than the hell that we don't know. So they settle for less, they become victims, they feel sorry for themselves, and the whole thing spirals downwardly. When you're afraid you're a victim, you don't have to take responsibility for your actions. You don't have to take responsibility for moving your life forward in a positive direction. And it's the same for the other emotional addictions as well. Sadness is an emotional addiction that creates victims. No one likes to be sad, but there are about 350 million people in the world that are addicted to sadness. These are people who are clinically depressed. So there's actual brain chemistry changes. It's a very real thing. When we're addicted to sadness, what happens? We scan for and create a reality in our lives. We attract people into our lives that make us sad. Now, how can someone make us sad? Well, we'll attract jobs that make us sad. We'll attract people that make us sad. We'll attract situations that make us sad. We'll be a victim. We'll evoke the pity of other people, and we'll get to stay stuck on our pity pots. Poor me, it's not my fault. I'm abused. I'm in this bad relationship. I'm poor, whatever it is. And I'm not minimizing the pain here. What I'm saying is, when you take responsibility for your situation, not like it's your fault, because responsibility isn't about blame or fault. It's about being able to respond in such a way that empowers you to break through a bad situation.
Mm.
So when you have the ability to break through a bad situation, you can now redirect your life. So if you're addicted to sadness, what it means is recognizing when you interpret something that makes you sad, or when you buy into somebody else's negativity that makes you sad, and releasing the sadness, creating a new interpretation that makes you happy, and then doing something that promotes the happiness. Let's talk about the other two areas. The area of anger. Anger is a very dominant emotion. It makes people right and causes other people to be wrong when you're angry. It allows you to be powerful in the moment. It allows you to be forceful and justify your behavior. It allows you to do horrible things and justify it. I was angry. It wasn't my fault. You provoked my anger. And so when people are angry and they don't manage that angry state, what happens? They attract more anger to them. They attract energy and emotions that are consistent with what they're giving out. So if we look at the world today, we look at the violence and the looting and the burning of buildings and the crazy stuff that's going on. We should know that only love can heal hate. Hate can't heal hate. And when we fight anger with more anger, we attract more anger into our lives in situations that deteriorate the quality of our lives. It's the same with anxiety. People who are anxious will do things that continue to make them anxious. They'll live on the edge. Maybe they'll live in an abusive relationship, or they'll live in fear of losing their job at any time. They'll live on the poverty line, or afraid of not having enough to eat or feed their families, because they're addicted to that anxiety. It keeps them alive and churning in that drama cycle of life. We don't like being anxious. We don't like being afraid. We don't like being sad, and we don't like being angry. So why do we keep it in place? It's because we get the contrary benefits that come with being a victim when we are at the effect of what life gives us. So how do we break through that? One great exercise that I'd like to give you today is to keep an anger journal, or to keep a sadness journal, or a fear or an anxiety journal. So anytime you notice your emotional reactive response to life, you write it down and you ask yourself these questions. What did someone say or do that caused me to be in my emotional addictive mood of whatever it is for you? Anger, sadness, fear, anxiety. And what is the new interpretation that I can create while having empathy for what it's like in their world that has no negative emotion attached? So how can I give this person the benefit of the doubt? And it's going to feel awfully odd, because the emotion makes your interpretation seem real. So when you're boiling with anger, or when you're shaking with fear, you believe the interpretation that you've created because it's so emotionally based. But it doesn't have to be any more real than the interpretation that you create deliberately by giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, by releasing the fear or the anger or the sadness or the anxiety, and creating an interpretation that empowers you. Once you've created that new interpretation, it means that you've given up your right to be a victim. It means that you're willing in that moment to create a new interpretation, because it's very juicy to hold on to the old one that has you angry or sad or afraid or fearful or whatever that is for you. So when you're willing to give up your right to create a new interpretation, you release the emotion, you change your state, you breathe deeply, backward from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And you now look at, okay, what's this new interpretation that I can create that will empower me to move forward? Maybe it's the other person's having a bad day. Maybe it's that, that person is doing things based upon the fears that they have in the world. So we never know really what it's like in another person's world fully. We never know what their childhood was fully like. So we can have empathy and forgiveness and gratitude and release those negative emotions. We can create a new interpretation that empowers us, and then we can take action. And the action has to address the fear or the anger or the anxiety or the sadness. So let me give you an example. our significant other yells at us. And what do? We go the path of least resistance, which is what we usually do. If we're addicted to anger, we fight back. We call them a name. We slam the door. We walk out. We create a fight, whatever it is. Okay? If we're addicted to sadness, we hide in our room. We feel sorry for ourselves. We become the victim and say, why me, God? Why do I have to deal with this? It's not fair. It's not fair. If we're anxious, we say, what am I going to do now? I'm in trouble. Oh, I don't know what to do here because this is going to ruin my life, because we're addicted to these emotional states. If we're willing to release the negative emotions and we're willing to create a positive interpretation that supports us and then take some action that moves us forward, like forgiving the other person, like calling somebody who's positive and getting a power shot of positivity, or smiling at somebody who maybe is having a bad day, doing something nice for another person who's less fortunate than us, something that will break up the mood and empower our lives to move forward. Because once we can create habits that support us to move forward, we can actually break up these patterns in life that have us be codependent, have our self-esteem damaged, and have us churning in this drama cycle that leads to negative spirals, that downward spirals that actually ruin our lives because of who we're being when we are in that reactive state.
That was so helpful. I so appreciate you going through an exercise that everyone can take on in their life. And whatever emotion you're addicted to, if that is you, whoever's watching right now, take it through Joe's exercise as it relates to that. The one I most resonated with was the anxiety, which is what I was talking about before. So that's really great. I love it. And then shifting it into a positive interpretation. So thank you so much. Gosh, this has been an amazing conversation. One thing that also is coming to my mind is, like, what do you think, based on all your work in self-esteem, what do you think is the cause of codependency? Where do you think it comes from in our childhoods, if it does come from our childhoods?
It comes from an interpretation that we made that we're not enough ourselves, that we're not capable, that we're not competent, that we're not worthy, that we're not significant. And so we have to attach ourselves to somebody else's wagon. We have to latch on to someone else in order to survive, because it's all about survival. Codependency is about survival. And when we decide that we are so flawed in some significant way that we need someone else who maybe doesn't serve us, that relationship, maybe it's an abusive relationship, or it's a negative relationship, or it's a relationship where we have drastically different values or life rules. But what we've said is that this is just the way I am, and I have to do something to survive, so this is how I'm going to survive. So it's the formula that we decided that we would follow in order to survive and live in the world, despite our negative flaws, which we've all made up or bought into. So the good news is that you only have these flaws if you believe that you have the flaws. And you have as much ability to break through and to reinvent yourself in a way that empowers your life and makes you happy and fulfilled and enhances your relationships and creates greater abundance in your life and really has you live with passion. But you have to believe in yourself. You have to know that it's inevitable. Because when we see our future as inevitably bright, inevitably successful, we create the self-motivation that's necessary in order for us to break up the actions that keep us stuck and suffering and staying in that codependent relationship. So work on yourself. Know that as you work on yourself, your partner is going to have a decision to make. They're either going to have to work on themselves and shift, because when you change your dance, they have no option but to change the way that they're dancing. So you have the ability to empower your life right now. Let this be the first step in that empowered new life of yours. Know that if you take on personal development, if you know that you have the ability to learn the principles that will reinvent your life, that will help you to be happy and fulfilled and abundant and self-sufficient in a way where when you are with someone, you're there in choice. You're there because you want to be with them. You're not there because you have to be with them. You're not there because you don't know how to do things on your own. You're there because it's a choice that you've made. And you'll free up that relationship from so much burden. When you do that, the relationship itself will be enhanced. So make that decision today and know that there's great tools out there, exercises based on solid principles. And we're going to talk in a little bit about a gift that we have that'll give you a jump start on this too.
Yeah, let's dive into that, Joe. So everybody, there's a couple buttons below this video that lead over to Joe's site, and you have a gift as well as a program. So what do you have for us?
Well, the gift is called 7 Steps to Soaring Self-Esteem, and it comes with a lesson in your inbox, email inbox, about every day or 2 days. And the lesson starts with the foundational principle that has you see life differently. Just kind of like, as an example, the emotional reactive state, where you are aware of your own emotional addiction. You get to reinterpret life in a way that you give up your right to be angry, sad, afraid, or anxious. You create a new interpretation, you move forward. So you learn the principle, and then you map that principle onto your life with an exercise. The exercise is critical because it has you take the information from just information and become a distinction that you actually get. Kind of like you need to learn to balance in order to ride a bike. You can't just read about how to ride a bike and successfully ride the bike. Once you learn balance, you become the distinction where you can now successfully ride the bike. When you learn these foundational principles and you map them onto your lives and you start living differently, deliberately, with intention, your life will transform. So that's the first gift. The second gift is an audio program that goes into more detail. And then about 2 weeks into the program, you'll receive an hour-long video that I did for public television called The #1 Secret to Success and Happiness in Life. And it goes into more detail with respect to how to implement those 3 key areas of life: healing and completing your past, assessing your present, designing your future and choice. This is a taste of what it's like to live an empowered life of high self-esteem. If you want to get into about 55 principles that are life transforming, I've created a course, one for adults and one for adults to teach children. So high self-esteem adults is the first program, and the second is high self-esteem kids. The high self-esteem adults program has all of these 50 to 55 principles that are life transforming. You'll get to experience the principles, map them onto your own life, change your own life, help your family to change their lives. For those that want to do the work that I do, there's an optional certification. It's optional. You don't have to do it, but there's an exam that you can take if you want in order to become certified by the Center for Personal Reinvention in order to become a self-esteem elevation coach for either adults or children. The children's program has totally different exercises aimed at how do we empower kids to not become codependent, to not develop low self-esteem, but to be empowered to live their lives believing in themselves, believing that they can have it all, and then manifesting that intention of having whatever their dream life looks like. So start with the gift. The gift is one that you'll immediately see a difference if you do the exercises. If you don't do the exercises, it's not going to assist you because the exercises are critical for you to experience what it's like to make this principle part of your own being, your own energy field, your own existence. And then for those people that want to join our team of light bearers by impacting yourself, impacting your family, and even impacting others in the world, I invite you to join us in these other programs, which we've highly discounted. The lowest price we ever offered, it's like 96% off the regular price. Why? Because I'm 63 years old, and because my vision is to impact the lives of 20 million adults and 20 million children. And I realize that I can't do it alone. I need people who map these principles onto their lives, who can share them with others. If you look at the state of our world today, you'll realize it's not going in the right direction in so many ways. It's ruled by people who are emotionally addictive, by people who are codependent on others and things that don't support them. And so I invite you to join our team of light bearers to learn these. What would life be like for you if you saw life totally empowered every day? What would life be like if every member of your family believed in themselves and knew that they could accomplish abundance and happiness and rich relationships and fulfilling work and everything else that's important to them in life, what would your life actually be like? And so join our team of light bearers by at least impacting your own life. And then once you have impacted your life, you can't help but impact others who come into contact with you. Everyone will benefit from you on a daily basis, have their day be made better, because if that's your intention. So those are the programs, and I invite you to not let this be just an interesting conversation for you today. Take some action, because without action, nothing changes. You need to take responsibility for moving your life forward. And here are 3 different ways that you can at least start that process.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I love it. And everyone watching right now, we've had Dr. Joe on many events here at AVAIYA, and many people in AVAIYA University have gone through Joe's programs. So I highly recommend you take them on. And if you have children, take on that one as well, because absolutely, what more can we do for our world than to help our kids be have high self-esteem and be not codependent, and have healthy relationships with themselves and others. So thank you so much, Joe. Any last insights? Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Just the last insight is good news. It's the news that there's no accident that you were here today watching this program and Andy's other programs. These are here to support you to take the next step, but the next step is up to you. Get the free stuff, if nothing more than that. Look into making a decision and a declaration that I am going to break through codependence. I am going to be empowered in my life. I'm going to live passionately. I'm going to discover and live my life purpose. I'm going to actually be empowered to make other people's lives better and to be a contribution in the world. Once you come from that perspective, new doors will open. People will show up that you didn't even know existed before. Opportunities will suddenly materialize that you've been waiting for your whole life. It's because you've made the commitment. So my encouragement to you is to not just let this be an interesting experience today. Make a commitment. Know that every day when you start to live intentionally, the first thing I do every day is I create a list of my intentions for the day, the things that I must get done today, and then I prioritize them. Because I found that when we live intentionally, our life changes. We are no longer a victim. We're no longer at the effect of what life gives us. And it's a very empowered and empowering place to come from. And I wish you Godspeed in making your life a life of your dreams.
Thank you so much. It was so great to reconnect with you. I so appreciate it.
My pleasure, Andy. Thank you for having me, and God bless everyone.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much for showing up for yourself on this journey, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this latest class with Dr. Joe Rubino. We talked about the most important component in breaking free from codependency, that being high self-esteem. As I mentioned in the beginning of the class, Dr. Joe has been featured in several other masterclasses here at AVAIYA, like breaking free from abandonment and betrayal, overcoming insecurity and low self-esteem. And if you haven't checked out those other events, I highly recommend you do, as they really heavily relate to this topic on breaking free from codependency. So a bunch of take-home messages from our conversation with Joe. The first thing was really just like, what are the different places that your codependent tendencies show up in your life? And just be willing to explore this. Do these tendencies show up in romantic relationships? Do they show up in your friendships? Do they show up in relationships with your parents, your mother, your father? Do they show up in your relationship with your pets, something that I shared about? Do they show up in your work relationships with your boss, with co-workers, colleagues, those kinds of things? So just kind of taking a look at all the different areas where some of these tendencies of having low self-esteem, or feeling like you need to people please, or being afraid of being abandoned, or being afraid of conflict, all those kinds of codependent tendencies, where are they showing up in your life? So something to perhaps journal about, or take some time to look at in yourself today. Also, being addicted to emotion. This is a really, really important topic. I personally relate to this topic so much, and I like to call it emotional intoxication, like I was mentioning in the class today. So are you addicted to different states of emotion, and what are those? And I think sometimes when we use the word addiction, I think there might be some blame or shame that people experience around that. But I would invite you to take a look at if this is something that you experience, like addiction to these different emotions, and not beat yourself up, because that's just going to put yourself in a victim point of view, in a victim stance, which is not going to help you come up out of these tendencies and really be able to overcome them if you're coming from that standpoint of victim. So just a little food for thought there. So take a look in your life, do a little inventory. Are you addicted to certain emotional states? Do you have a lot of obsessive thoughts about the future? So that would be really being addicted to like fear and anxiety, which is definitely something that I relate to in my personal life. Are you addicted to being angry and having situations in your life where you can get angry and get upset with other people and, really feel that anger and that emotion and that energy in your body? Are you addicted to feeling sad, or really just like feeling bad about yourself, or feeling shamed about yourself, or those kinds of things? So just interesting areas to take a look at in your life. And again, maybe things that you could journal about, things that you could start exploring for yourself. For me, like I've mentioned, anxiety is my biggest, I would say, emotional addiction, because I tend to go into a lot of catastrophizing. I tend to go into a lot of obsessive thinking about the future primarily, right? Like a lot of what ifs. What if this happens, or what if that happens? I've shared a lot about my personal fears of abandonment. My partner Ike and I have been together for 10 years, and it still is underneath the surface in my life, something I'm constantly working on in myself. So are you someone who also has obsessive catastrophizing types of thoughts and go into these modes of what if this happens, what if that happens? So my recommendation to you, if that is something that you do and something that's worked for me, is just catch yourself in those moments, okay? And name it. Oh my God, I'm catastrophizing again. Oh my God, I'm going into obsessive thinking about the future. Oh my gosh, I'm playing the what if game, and those what ifs are not positive. Those what ifs are negative, right? So catch yourself in the moment, just recognizing you're doing it. And another thing that I find helpful is recognize that you don't have control over exactly what's going to happen in your life. And that, I think, brings a lot of anxiety to people. But recognizing you have no control over, right, what if this happens, what if that happens, to me, eventually brings me great peace, because all I can do is what I can do. The only things I can control are the things I can control, like my reactions to the world and catching myself when I'm in obsessive catastrophizing thoughts. So just take a look at that in yourself. Recognize that, hold on a second, I am going into the future in these what if kinds of obsessive negative thinking, and I can't predict, nor can I control what is going to happen in the next second, in the next minute, in the next day, all of that kind of stuff. So just take your journey one moment at a time. And, when you do catch yourself in those kinds of modes, I recommend you get back into your lane in life, right? What's your lane? Maybe that's, oh, I need to do some self-care. Maybe that's, I need to spend some time journaling. Maybe that's, I need to go take a walk. Maybe that's, I need to go get some exercise. Maybe I need to take a nap. Maybe I need to make myself a nice meal, those kinds of things. What can you do? What inspired actions can you take to get back into your lane, as opposed to being in this crazy lane of catastrophe and anxiety and really being addicted to those negative emotions that aren't helping you get to where you want to in your life. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm just so grateful for all of you, for listening, for watching, for being on this journey together. And here is to our collective journey to breaking free from codependency.